Today we're going to be discussing lawn weed control, but you can't talk anything about controlling weeds unless you know how to take care of your lawn, because I'll tell you, if your lawn is a weedy mess, like this lawn in this picture here, there's something not going right with how you're managing that turf grass, or perhaps the installation wasn't very good, but there's something not going right. And so there's some cultural practices that you can implement that will really encourage the growth of this grass and make that turf grass become very competitive and have less weed problems. So really and truly, the bottom line is when your lawn is healthy and thick, you don't have a lot of weed problems in it because it's very competitive and shades out weeds and outcompetes weeds. So that's what we're trying to achieve. So over half the battle is getting your lawn thick and healthy. When it's thick and healthy, you just don't have a lot of weed problems. So how do you do that? Well, you need to fertilize that lawn appropriately. You need to get a soil sample. When you go to the doctor, a doctor, and you're not feeling well, the doctor is going to want you to take a blood test. And he gets the results back of that blood test, and then he can adjust some things. And so that's what we do with a soil sample. We get that soil sample result back, and we're able to look through there, and we can help you with those results. Your parish agent can help you with those results. Get that soil sample and see where you are fertility-wise, that soil is fertility-wise, and it will really help you in getting that lawn back and strong and competitive. Mowing at the right height is highly important. You don't mow St. Augustine like a golf green. You maintain it at 3 inches. You lose the competitiveness of St. Augustine if you cut it short. Centipede can tolerate some lower mowing. And you want to water your lawn when it's dry. Essentially, St. Augustine and centipede grass, the most common lawns grown in Louisiana, run on top of the ground with runners called stolons, and then they root down. They're not very drought tolerant. When we get into a drought, often there are drought tolerant weeds that will have the competitive advantage. When we water, sometimes the water just won't go down through the soil profile, and that means the soil is compacted. When the soil is compacted, the lawn is not going to grow very well. It becomes thin, and weeds take it over. I want you to really focus on aeration for that lawn during the growing season. Renting an aerator or hiring it done, it's very important to loosen that soil up. When you water will go down through the profile. Also, it gets oxygen to the roots. It's highly important to aerate the lawn to make that lawn more competitive. Thick, healthy lawns don't have weed problems. So what do? Well, you're going to fertilize that lawn appropriately. Now, we recommend getting a soil sample. If you decide not to get a soil sample, then lawns can be fertilized during the growing season with fertilizer with a 4:1:2 ratio. An example of that would be like a 24:6:12. Now, we like to fertilize St. Augustine grass in April and June and August. Uh, Really and truly, I would prefer you get a soil sample so we can see where you are fertility-wise. If you decide not to do that, you could consider that 4:1:2 ratio uh, with fertilizer, and that kind of covers a lot of the bases. The thing is, though, the soil sample tells us exactly what we need to put on that yard. Another thing, too, about St. Augustine is we need to maintain it at the correct mowing height. It doesn't like to be cut short. That's one of the ways that it will thin out on you, and weeds will take it over. When you fertilize St. Augustine and mow it appropriately, and you aerate the soil, it becomes highly competitive, and you just don't see a lot of weed problems in it. Now, St. Augustine is one of the more shade-tolerant grasses, but I'll tell you, in deep shade, there is no way St. Augustine or any other grass is going to be able to handle deep shade for a long period. Uh, you need to get some sunlight on it. So in deep shade situations, you're probably looking at an eventual failure because lawns can't tolerate deep shade. St. Augustine, one of the more shade tolerant grasses. Now, centipede grass doesn't like as much fertilizer, so you'd fertilize it maybe once, maybe twice per year. That same ratio applies with centipede grass, but I will tell you, a soil sample means a lot with centipede because it likes to grow in an acidic soil, and you don't know this by looking at the soil. So a soil test will tell you a lot about why your centipede is not performing. Another thing about centipede grass is we cut it too tall. We try to maintain centipede grass like it's St. Augustine. Centipede grass likes to be cut short. Now, if you haven't been cutting your centipede grass short, Slowly bring it down over the growing season. Try to end up at the growing season with an inch, inch and a half mowing height. The thing about centipede is it may be declining because of drainage problems. And we see this often coming out of the winter time. It'll fade on you, and Bermuda grass will take it over. It doesn't like wet feet. So if you have drainage problems, centipede is not going to like that at all. It's going to fade out on you, and weeds are going to take it over. So don't let it grow tall, and try to correct any drainage problems. Get that soil sample. Let's see where you are fertility-wise and make those corrections. So Bermuda grass likes a lot of fertilizer and likes to be cut short. The thing about Bermuda grass is it is very shade intolerant. There would be a lot more lawns in Louisiana that are Bermuda grass because it's very tough, very drought tolerant. This is what we have on football fields and soccer fields because it can handle wear and tear. It's really good for a backyard if you have a bunch of dogs back there, but it will not tolerate shade. It is highly intolerant to shade. And so Bermuda grass can be an excellent lawn for you, but it's got that big problem. It won't tolerate shade, and we live in Africa hot Louisiana, and we like our shade trees, and Bermuda grass usually doesn't fit for us because we want shade trees. We want shade. We want to be able to enjoy our backyard. If you have a lot of shade trees, Bermuda grass is not going to be a fit for you. Zoysia grass does have some pretty good shade tolerance. It's a very tough grass, very drought tolerant, but we need to maintain it properly. It needs to be cut short. It hates to be cut tall, maintained tall, and it will also dull your mower blades. So you need to keep that mower blade sharp. You'd fertilize it in April and July. That ratio works, but get a soil sample and see where that soil is fertility-wise. We do these things. We get the fertility right, we mow correctly, and we do one more thing, then lawns can really, really change. And that one more thing, the missing link often in what we're doing to take care of our yards and why our yards get covered in weeds is the soils become compacted. And aeration is often the game changer. The way to get that lawn over the edge, to get it thick and healthy. And I'll tell you, I've seen dramatic turnarounds for yards when they get the proper amount of aeration. And we do this during the growing season, April through September. It could be done during that period, and it really will change your lawn. It will get oxygen into that root zone. It will get water into that root zone. The roots will go into areas that they've never been in. The constriction on those roots from compacted soils will be relieved, and it will really change your lawn. So some of the negative effects of compaction is just lower oxygen levels in that root zone and poor drainage. Water won't percolate through the soil profile. When you irrigate, it's just not efficient. Water will roll off, or it won't go down through the profile of the soil. So it is a game changer. Certain weeds like compacted soils. Goosegrass, for instance, loves compacted soils. I work a lot with football fields, and right down the middle of a football field, especially a high school football field, where all the action occurs, that's where we see a lot of goosegrass and annual bluegrass because of soil compaction. Aerate that soil. If you want to do a test, walk out in your yard with a screwdriver, a medium-sized screwdriver, and try pushing that through the soil profile. If you feel a lot of resistance, then likely you have a compaction problem, and aeration will really change your yard. So can it really change your yard? Will it really turn your lawn around? I've seen this so much, but I'm going to give you what we like to call a testimonial. And this was a struggling centipede turf grass. It was a homeowner, and they were having all kinds of problems. The lawn had some herbicide damage. This is in April. The soil was compacted. He had nutrient deficiencies, a high pH. So we put him on a recovery plan. We got a soil sample, and we analyzed that soil sample. The sample showed that he had some issues with phosphorus and potassium deficiencies, and the soil pH was also pretty high. So he addressed these nutrient deficiencies, and he also aerated. He rented an aerator, and he used it a couple of times. And we had good growing conditions during the summertime. When he started aerating, he was able to get, the irrigation became more efficient. So we really like deep and infrequent irrigation. We want to encourage the roots to go deeply in the soil. If we're irrigating every day, the root system won't get very deep. Deep and infrequent irrigation is definitely the way to go. And the way to make that work is to aerate, loosen that soil up, get that water to go down through the profile. And you can hire this done, or you can do it yourself. You can rent one and do it yourself. But it really will change your turf grass. So will it change your turf? Definitely it will. So putting into practice these good cultural practices, this weedy mess of thin lawn, terrible centipede grass was changed during the growing season. A good, thick, healthy turf by the time September rolled around. He sent me these pictures. He was very excited about his yard. And I'm telling you, aerating, improving the fertility, getting that soil sample will dramatically change your lawn. It's not an overnight change, but you will see results. You'll see the lawn improving very quickly. But I'm telling you, growing this turf correctly is the way to really control weeds. That's how we keep weeds down and get a beautiful lawn. So just some more pictures here of that lawn. You can see the lawn in April, same location in September after going through a growing season of growing that turf grass the way it should be grown. And I'm telling you, it is a game changer. So that's really how we control weeds. However, I know eventually you get to the point where you might need to use herbicides, but I just want you to know you can really, if you don't pick a herbicide up and spray it, you want to really change your yard, start doing the cultural practices that will make that yard grow and get thick. And that's how we really take care of a lot of our weed problems. So when it comes to weeds, I know we all have a few weeds in our yard. Some people have more than others, but you got to have an understanding of what you're battling out there. So there are different categories and types of weeds. There may be some broadleaves out in your yard, and you'll see broadleaves will have showy flowers. Like this oxalis here makes a yellow flower. There's also a pink flowered oxalis that will get in the lawn. This is dandelion right here. But the number one weed problem in southern turfgrass is Virginia buttonweed. It makes those white flowers. That's a summer perennial. But these broadleaves are just really common in the yard. This is the most damaging of all because it can actually kill your yard by forming a mat. But the thing about broadleaves, the way you know you've got one are the showy flowers and that netted venation on the leaves. And they have a deep taproot. And when they first emerge from seed, they have two seed leaves. You might, butter beans would be a good example. Peas would be a good example of a broadleaf. When it emerges from the soil, from a seed, you'll see two seed leaves. A grass will have one seed leaf, like corn, for instance. So that's a broadleaf. We also have grasses. Grasses have one seed leaf, like corn when it emerges from the soil, or crabgrass. This is crabgrass, a young seedling crabgrass, and this is more of a mature crabgrass right here. The thing about grasses don't make showy flowers. Their seed head is their flower, and it's not really trying to attract insects. Another thing about grasses, and this is a corn plant right here. I realize you probably don't have corn growing in your yard, but this is a corn plant. It's a grass, and look at the veins on those leaves. They're running parallel. A broadleaf has netted venation and showy flowers. Grasses have parallel veins and has non-showy flowers. Grasses are hard to control in the lawn because you're growing a grass. You're growing St. Augustine, centipede, zoysia grass. And so when it comes to controlling grasses, you're growing a grass and you're trying to control a grass in a grass, if you follow me on that. That's hard to select out of a yard, a grass out of a grass. Taking a broadleaf out of your yard is a little bit easier. Might take you a few applications, but it's a little bit easier because a broadleaf is so different from a grass, the lawn that you're growing. There are herbicides that you can spray that will select a broadleaf out and cause minimal damage to your lawn. And then when it comes to grasses, though, it's hard to find a herbicide that will kill that grass and not hurt your yard. So we also have sedges. Sedges look like grasses, but they're not a grass. They're in a completely different family from grasses. And sedges have triangular stems. Grasses have round stems or flat stems. More of a showy flower, not really a flower, not really showy, but definitely more colorful than a grass seed head, grass flower. So Sedges are grass-like. There are herbicides that just kill sedges. One's called sedge hammer. That can be sprayed in the lawn. It will kill sedges and not hurt your yard. So we have herbicides that will kill sedges now. 25 years ago, 30 years ago, that we didn't have that option. Sedges were a huge problem in the yard. But I will tell you that purple nut sedge, the one you see right here that makes more of a burgundy or purple seed head, flower, is considered the #1 ranked weed problem in the world. You see this one a lot in flower beds, and it's very tough in flower beds. In flower beds, it is #1. So we have broadleaves, we have grasses, and we have sedges. But when it comes to trying to control weeds, we really rely heavily on prevention through proper cultural practices. Mowing correctly, fertilizing correctly, aerating your soil, making that lawn highly competitive. That's the most important method of lawn weed control. Just prevention through really taking care of that yard the way you're supposed to take care of it. If you get weeds in your lawn, you may consider hand removal. Some weeds hand remove really well. Some weeds like Virginia buttweed has a taproot. It's just going to break off and you can't get rid of it. Dallas grass is a clumping grass. It's deeply rooted. You'll have a hard time hand removing it. We rely pretty heavily on herbicides, either organic or inorganic. Usually the inorganic ones are more effective. Herbicides are just a tool. They can be safely applied to your lawn, and they can be safely applied with you as a taking good care of yourself and with proper precautions. They can be used safely in the lawn. So just a little bit about herbicides in a Herbicide 101. Herbicides are any substance that kills or injures plants. Now, that could be vinegar, that could be Roundup. The active ingredient is the actual molecule that's providing the herbicidal action. So you might see the name Roundup, but the actual active ingredient is glyphosate. You might see Bonide grass beater, but the active ingredient is cythoxanil. That's what causes the herbicidal action. Now, and the mode of action, that's a fancy phrase for how the herbicide works in the plant. You don't just spray it on the weed and it kills the weed. It shuts a process down, usually inside the plant, that's leading to the death of the plant. And these processes, chlorophyll production, photosynthesis, interfering with photosynthesis, these are things that we don't have. Humans don't have, animals don't have these processes. And that's what most of these herbicides are working on, some type of process inside the plant that slowly leads to the death of the plant, protein production, something like that. It's often these herbicides are slow, and I think it takes them forever. It takes them 2 to 3 weeks in many cases to kill the weeds. So herbicides are just a tool. You can choose not to use them. That's why we harp so much on getting your lawn healthy. If you get that lawn thick and healthy, you may not need herbicides because if you have a few weeds, it kind of blends in. Eventually, the turf grass will outcompete a lot of the weed problems that you're having. So get the lawn healthy. That's how we really combat weed problems. So there are different types of herbicides. There are pre-emergence and post-emergence herbicides. Pre-emergence herbicides, usually at the homeowner level, they're going to be granular, and they provide weed prevention, mainly on annuals. They kill weeds as the weeds are germinating from seeds. Usually we rely on crabgrass control and goosegrass control with pre-emergence herbicides. Normally we put those out in late winter because these summer grasses in Louisiana start germinating in late winter when our soil temperatures get to be about 55, 58 degrees. And usually that corresponds to the end of January, early February in the New Orleans area, up to maybe the end of February in North Louisiana. So we try to get these pre-emerge herbicides out in a timely fashion and before the weeds are germinating. And there's a lot of options there. Some are listed here, pictures here, crabgrass preventer type herbicides that you can spread with a fertilizer spreader in your yard, and they'll do a pretty good job. You make an application in late winter, make another application usually around Easter. Once the weeds are emerged, we rely on post-emergence herbicides. You could spot treat with Roundup. MSM Turf is a herbicide that works pretty well. We repeated applications on Virginia buttweeds, pretty good on dollarweed too. Grass Be Gone is a grass-killing herbicide only that you might use in your flower beds. Vinegar would be a spot treatment type herbicide that's non-selective. You spray it and would burn the weed that you spray, also would burn your lawn. It's non-selective. So when we talk about herbicides, some more types of herbicides, we have contact herbicides, which just burn tissue, like clove oil, which is used a lot with organic herbicide mixes, or Roundup, which we know is glyphosate. Hits the leaves of a plant and translocates to the growing point, moves in the plant. Regardless of where you spray it, it moves all over the plant if that plant is actively growing. Contact herbicides, like the organic herbicides, only burn tissue. They don't move into the underground parts of the plant, the root system. They just burn what you spray them on. Roundup hits the leaves and goes down through the lower portion of the plant. MSM would hit the leaves of a weed and go down into the lower portion of the plants and translocate all over the plant. We have non-selective herbicides and we have selective herbicides. Roundup would be a non-selective herbicide. Citrus oil would be a non-selective herbicide. Selective herbicides would be like MSM turf, would control broadleaves and release your St. Augustine grass. So selective versus non-selective, pretty important. If you're going to go with a synthetic herbicide, you're probably going to want to go with a selective herbicide that will release your lawn and kill the broadleaf that you're trying to kill. What about organic options? Are there some organic options in the lawn? Well, there are some organic options, but they're non-selective. And so you would spray them in spot treatments only. And what we have seen is they have not been nearly as effective on perennial plants as they would be on an annual. Here's one called Burnout, which is a clove oil product with clove oil and citric acid. It's a high mix rate, smells incredible. I really love the smell. And you can burn young weeds back with it. But if you spray this on Virginia buttonweed or on Bermuda grass, it's just going to burn it and it's going to come back because it doesn't move that herbicide, that clove oil and that citric acid won't move down into the root system. It's going to burn the top. So you have to be careful with it, but it is an organic option for spot treatment. Another spot treatment that we like that burns weeds back is Avenger, which is a citrus oil-based product. It's a spot treatment type product, and it will burn weeds back to a certain extent, but not very good on perennial plants because it doesn't translocate. Polygonic acid is also an option. It's probably my favorite of the organic options. It's also a spot treatment herbicide because it's non-selective. It wouldn't know spurge from your St. Augustine grass yard. So you would spot treat with it. And it's also going to be poor on perennials because you don't get any kind of movement of that herbicide down into the underground parts. But it would be my favorite of the organic herbicides. Scythe is just a trade name that's out there. So when it comes to organic versus inorganic, the organic products are okay on newly germinated annuals, but they will injure your lawn. Not very effective on perennial plants because they don't move into the underground parts. They don't translocate down into the underground parts of a plant. They don't get into the root system. There's really no comparison when it comes to weed control between an organic product and an inorganic product, a synthetic product. These synthetic products are just work better on the weeds. I mean, they're a tool. You can choose not to use them, but they are a tool that can be used safely in the yard to select weeds out and release your lawn. So the bottom line is, though, get your lawn healthier, and you may not need any herbicides. Just getting that lawn and growing it the way you should makes it very competitive, and you have less weed pressure when you have a competitive lawn. So if you choose to put a herbicide out in your yard, how do you apply it? Well, you can take a pump-up sprayer and spot treat, or you can try to broadcast treat with a pump-up sprayer. Those backpack sprayers make that a little bit easier to do. You try to make a gallon of water cover 1,000 square feet if you're going to be broadcast spraying with a pump-up backpack or inexpensive pickup type sprayer. Another option would be like a hose-in sprayer, and those are easier to use. You may use a broadcast sprayer. If you have a large yard, you may have a four-wheeler or some other type of a tractor, perhaps, or maybe use a mower with a pull type sprayer. So the thing is, you want to be as accurate as you possibly can be. You want to determine how much output that sprayer is applying to be able to put the correct amount of herbicide in the sprayer, so you need to calibrate to a certain extent. So you might also choose a granular spreader, and it might tell you what number to put your spreader on. So the key here is, if you're going to put a pesticide out, a herbicide out, you want to always read the product labels. Extremely important to cut down on any kind of issues for injuring your lawn or injuring yourself. What proper attire should you wear? It's all in the product labels. So some herbicides through the years that we've tested that have done really well for us in our research trials. And you might consider purchasing if you decide you want to spray herbicides in your lawn. We've had really good luck with a product called Weed Free Zone. It's a Fertilome product that only kills broadleaves, and we really like it on winter weeds. When you start applying it, when temperatures get well above 80 in hot, humid weather, which I know we rarely have in Louisiana. Just kidding. We have a lot of hot, humid weather. You can see a lot more injury on grasses like St. Augustine and centipede grass. So watch temperatures with this herbicide. Another herbicide that we like a lot for winter weeds is atrazine. We really like these two together, Weed Free Zone and atrazine. And when it comes to winter weeds, this combination has worked really well for us because the atrazine picks up annual bluegrass, which is a very common winter grass that we see in yards. Another herbicide to consider purchasing that has done really well in our trials is MSM Turf. It's very good on broadleaves. There's good safety in St. Augustine, centipede grass, zoysia grass, Bermuda grass. It kills Bahia grass. That's the grass that makes the V-shaped seed head that drives everybody crazy in the summertime. It actually kills that one. But it's pretty good on broadleaves and lawn burrweed and clovers, dollarweed. Very low use rate, so be careful with it. I'm talking extremely low use rate. A half ounce will cover an acre. So this is one that we really like. Just be careful. It's a very low use rate herbicide, very high LD50, which is the higher the LD50, the better it is when it comes to the environment and toxicity. Very high number, which means it's a very highly non-toxic herbicide when used as directed. So we do have some specific problems that we see, reoccurring problems in the lawn. And these are some weeds that we see and some of their herbicide solutions. So we see a lot of winter weeds in late wintertime in the lawn. The lawn is dormant, it's not competitive, and these winter weeds will just take it over. I'm talking about weeds like chickweed and henbit, sticky willy, which is also called bedstraw, lawn burrweed, stickerweed is another name for that, or annual bluegrass, that quintessential winter grass that's covering everybody's lawn in late winter. It flowers, it produces this seed head that's kind of white, and the lawns are just full of it in late winter. So what do we do about them? Well, we will also see a lot of lawn burrweed, and I mentioned that one earlier. That's the sticker weed. The stickers start forming in March and April. That's the seed capsule, which contains the seed. It has little barbs on it. You step on it, it gets in your foot in springtime, and it's very painful. So this is one right here that we want to try to get out of the yard. And atrazine is very good on it. Weed Free Zone is very good on it. MSM Turf is very good on it. What you don't want to do is wait until April, May to try to control it, because it's formed its barbs, and that's what you're stepping on. So try to control this one before we get late into the spring, because it's producing a lot of seeds. You can control it, but you've got to get on it early. So annual bluegrass, again, is that quintessential winter grass. Very common in yards, and atrazine is pretty good on that. It's out everywhere in late winter, and it's also an indicator of compaction too. So annual bluegrass is a very common winter grass. What I would suggest is this combination right here, either applied separately or together in the same sprayer. We've had a lot of luck with Weed Free Zone, which has leaf uptake, and atrazine, which has root uptake. This two-pronged attack has been very effective on winter weeds. You can make the application in November, and repeat that application in January and February, we have really cleaned up winter weeds with these two herbicides, either applied within a few days of each other, the order doesn't matter, or in the same sprayer. Very, very effective on winter weeds. Dollar weed, we see this one a lot too when in the cool season. It will also linger into the summertime. This is a weed that's in the parsley family and loves wet areas, but it will grow anywhere it wants to really. When it's in the yard, we really like MSM turf on it, very effective. Also, that mix of weed free zone and atrazine works really well on dollar weed too. But again, I just hate to keep harping on this, but getting that lawn thick and healthy really helps with weeds, including dollar weed. Improving drainage will really help with dollar weed. So when you aerate, you get the water to go down through the soil profile a little bit better, so you might not have a lot of standing water, which really dollar weed loves. It loves high moisture areas. So just some common summer weeds that you'll see in the lawn. We get crabgrass and we get goosegrass a lot in the yards. And that's a late winter germinating. It's a summer annual, but it germinates in late winter. And so we rely heavily on pre-emergence herbicides, such as the Scott's Halts product. You apply these herbicides with a spreader, and then you water them in. You try to make these applications before Valentine's Day, usually at the end of January, say in New Orleans. And then you have a follow-up application around Easter. And it does a really good job of preventing goosegrass and crabgrass. And we rely heavily on these pre-emergence herbicides. There's very good safety for your landscape plants. There's good safety for your lawn too when it's well established. So these two applications of these pre-emergence herbicides are somewhere in late winter or late January, maybe somewhere around Valentine's Day up in North Louisiana, to later February in North Louisiana. We have really had good results with these pre-herbicides. So I would encourage you to use these herbicides in your yard. What about common Lespedeza? Now this is a broadleaf. It has, you can't see it very well, the veins on the leaves because it's such a small growing plant, but it is a broadleaf. It makes showy flowers, makes little purple flowers. It's almost woody. It's mat forming, and I see this one a lot in centipede grass. So this particular broadleaf can be tough to control if we wait until September or October to try to control it. It's an annual that is a legume. It's in the clover family, the bean family, but it really indicates low nitrogen fertility. So you may not be fertilizing your yard enough if you see a lot of common Lespedeza. Now, you don't fertilize centipede grass as much as you do St. Augustine or Bermuda grass, but you still need to fertilize. And this is a common weed problem. It's an annual. It's a big seed producer. It's a summer annual. We really like this product right here, the MSM turf on it. It's worked really well for us. And but get that fertility right, get the mowing height right. And when it comes to controlling this weed, because it's an annual and there's a seed bank full of seed, it may take you 2 applications to get it. But we've had really good luck trying to control Lespedeza with MSM turf. So some of the hardest to control weeds in the lawn that you'll see in South Louisiana especially is torpedo grass. I always tell people when it comes to torpedo grass, don't look directly at the screen. That's how invasive it is. It'll get in your yard just by looking at it. Well, it's probably not that invasive, but it's still highly invasive. It's a perennial summer grass. It was introduced into South Louisiana in the 1920s along the Gulf Coast as a forage for cattle. They later found out it's not a very nutritious forage for cattle, but it's escaped extremely hard to control. And we usually will bring this one in to our yard. We're building a house. We're building a flower bed. River silt sometimes you'll bring it in with the river silt. So just be careful where you're getting your soil from. Make sure you're not bringing it into your yard. It doesn't produce viable seeds. It solely reproduces by you bringing plant parts into your yard. And over a year or so, you'll find it all over your yard if you introduce it. So it's highly competitive and extremely hard to control. So this is one we really want you to be cognizant of in your yard. It could start in your flower bed and then make its way into your yard. Once it gets into your yard, it's almost uncontrollable. When it comes to controlling torpedo grass, I wish I could tell you there's a magic bullet, but there really isn't. If you get it, torpedo grass in zoysia grass or Bermuda grass, you can use a product called, with the active ingredient quinclorac. The trade name is Drive, and there's some generics of it out there. You can kind of keep it at bay with quinclorac, but that can only be used in Bermuda grass and in zoysia grass. There's really no control in St. Augustine, possibly spot treating local populations with Roundup, glyphosate. Uh, Temporary suppression can be achieved with cefoxidime, which is also called bonide grass beater, that can be sprayed in centipede grass. Eventually, the torpedo grass recovers. Eventually, the torpedo grass wins in centipede grass. Really and truly, ultimately, you usually end up with the nuclear option. And I always hate to use the nuclear option because that's a do-over. And that's when you spray your yard with Roundup or some generic of Roundup, some active ingredient, something with the active ingredient glyphosate. High rates, sometimes repeated applications, kill everything off and resod the yard with zoysia grass. If you go back with zoysia grass, you can use the quinclorac product if you get the torpedo grass back again. What you hope is that you kill it with the Roundup applications. But it's a terrible thing to have torpedo grass in the yard. So hopefully you won't get in that situation. Just keep an eye on any soil that's brought into that yard. Make sure it doesn't have any torpedo grass plant parts. Make sure you know where that soil came from. So that leads us to the #1 ranked weed problem in southern turfgrass, and that is Virginia buttonweed. Virginia buttonweed, very difficult to control, highly competitive. And once you get this one established in the lawn, you're almost in the nuclear option when it comes to Virginia buttonweed too. It's the #1 weed problem in southern turfgrass. It's perennial. It produces seed above ground, produces seed below ground. It's a summer perennial. Likes hot weather, can handle drought, can handle wet conditions too. It's very opportunistic. If your lawn has a disease problem or insects kill out your lawn in the location, Virginia buttonweed will take that spot. It's a mat forming plant, weed, and it will shade out your lawn and smother out your lawn. So very hard to manage Virginia buttonweed, and it's also a tremendous seed producer. And it produces these seed capsules, and you see this in the wintertime. The capsules, you won't find the plant because it's a perennial summer weed. It doesn't grow in the wintertime. But you'll see the seed capsules. And each one of those seed capsules that you see right here, there's 2 seed in each capsule. And it is extremely viable. The seeds are extremely viable. So Virginia buttonweed, very difficult to control. The mother plant comes out in late February and March. And that perennial mother plant, the seedlings will start germinating around it. And eventually you have a mat formed. Those seedlings look like this. They're not hard to control. The seedlings are not hard to control. So we recommend some herbicide applications in the early growing season to try to control these seedlings, to try to cut down on the mat production. What you don't want to do is wait till September and October when the mat has formed. It's killed the yard underneath the mat. So you got to stay on buttonweed. You can't give buttonweed a break. No single application will kill it. Don't wait until August, September, October to try to control it. It's hardened off by then by drought, and it's hardened off by tough growing conditions in the summertime. It becomes very difficult to control. So we like a program approach when it comes to Virginia buttonweed. That means you start out early. We like that Fertilome Weed-Free Zone product on it in spot treatments, March, April, that perennial mother plant and the seedlings that are germinating around it. Once we get into the mid-80s, it becomes too hot for that herbicide, and you end up injuring your yard as we get into the hotter temperatures. And that's when we switch to these other products, MSM Turf and Celsius. I admit, controlling buttonweed is complicated. You don't give it a break. Every 4 to 6 weeks, you're putting something out on it. That's how difficult it is to control. It's important to get your yard healthy during this period. Thicken it up, fertilize it properly, mow it correctly, aerate the lawn, make that herbicide work for you, kill that, knock the weed back, and then try to take that territory back by pushing your yard growth with fertilizing appropriately and mowing appropriately. Controlling Virginia buttonweed is very difficult, can get complicated. You don't give it a break because it'll form a mat and kill your yard. So buttonweed is one you really have to stay on top of. Overall, I'll just tell you the key to controlling weeds is getting your lawn thick and healthy. Before you pick up a herbicide, get that soil sample result back and get your parish agent to help you interpret so that you can get your yard in the best health that it can be in. Aerate that lawn during the growing season, mow it correctly, and you will see that lawn change. I've seen horrible situations turn into beautiful lawns, and you will too. You can transform your lawn just by proper cultural practices. And if you decide to use a herbicide on your weed problems, read those product labels and be as accurate as possible with your applications. But the most important way to prevent weeds is being good to your yard. Get that lawn fertilized correctly, mowed correctly, aerate, and watch what happens. You're going to have a lot less weed pressure, and you're going to have a beautiful lawn. Thank you so much for your attention. Please feel free to email me if you have questions. Feel free to contact your parish agent, and have a great day.